Auspicious blessings to our viewers across the world. Welcome to this session of Guang Shan English Dharma Services Live. Because of your support, this channel has grown to over 1,000 subscribers. And as promised, we have organized this live session to celebrate this milestone. Before the panel, we would like to start with a brief chanting session. The procedure is as follows. First, Ode to the Triple Gem. Second, triple invocation of Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Third, the Heart Sutra. Fourth, taking refuge. Fifth, the dedication of merits. The procedure and the text will be shown on the screen so that everyone can follow along. Without further ado, please let us join our palms and join the Dharma chanting. Let us begin.
Namo So that is the conclusion of our chanting session for today. For our live panel today, we have 3 of our Dharma teachers from Guang Shan joining us, spanning from 3 different time zones. So let me first introduce them. First, we have Venerable Juewei from Canada. She is the Abbess of Guang Shan, Toronto, as you can see from her background. She's at lovely Guang Shan, Toronto. Welcome, Venerable Juewei. Next, from down under in Australia, we have Venerable Juewei. She is the director of the Humanistic Buddhism Center at Nantian Institute. And last but not least, from Guang Shan headquarters in Taiwan, we have Venerable Miao. She is the deputy director of Guang Shan Institute of Humanistic Buddhism and the personal interpreter to Venerable Master Xingyun, who is our founder. Big welcome to all 3 of our panelists. And also here with us live, we have some special guest audience. First, we have Ina Denton from Orlando, Florida. Hello, Ina. Next, we have Chris and Priscilla from Australia. And then from Hong Kong, we have Calvin and Pauline. Thank you for being with us today. And we come from all parts of the globe, but as we all know that this year, 2020 has been very challenging for us, no matter where we come from. And so in times like this, we need the light of the Dharma to show us the way out of crisis. Therefore, for this session, we are inviting each of our speakers to talk about their personal practice of the Noble Eightfold Path and how this can be the Buddhist response to the current world. And in additionally, we are also inviting our Zoom guest audience, our practitioners from across the world, to also give us some comments and questions in response to what our panelists say. So before we begin, this is just a reminder to all of our panelists and live audience that to ensure a smooth session, please mute your microphones if not speaking. And the shortcut is Alt-A on your keyboard if you would like to mute and unmute. And remember, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand and we will call on you. Once called upon, please remember to unmute your microphones when speaking. And this is for our viewers at home. If you have any comments or questions you'd like to ask any of our panelists, you can submit your questions via the chat box on YouTube Live, and we will direct them to our panelists during our Q&A session. Okay. So for the first part, let's talk about the Eightfold Path. The Buddha taught us the Noble Eightfold Path as a way to alleviate suffering and guide practitioners towards tranquility. So as Dharma practitioners, we often talk about the different ways or paths that allow us to navigate ourselves towards Buddhahood and enlightenment. So my first question goes to Venerable Miao. What exactly is this Noble Eightfold Path? And why did the Buddha teach us? And what do you find so inspirational about this?
Thank you, Venerable Juewei, for the question. And good morning to the Venerables in North America, in Australia, from around the world, and all of our Bodhisattvas. Thank you for joining us on this session. First of all, I would like to thank everybody for making an effort to come together online. This connection to me is extremely meaningful for the fact that we are still able to see each other, feel each other's presence, and to share each other's wisdom. And so that's why in the past 3 months, we've made an effort to keep everybody connected through Dharma on this particular channel, the Guang Shan English Dharma services. And we hope you have found it fulfilling, as we have too. And so now back to the question raised by Venerable Juewei, talking about finding our way out of crisis. I feel that throughout the past 3 months, we have continued to search for a way to maintain our peace or to really sustain our lifestyle despite the changes. And so allow me to begin with the more theoretical part before we go into the practical aspects by everybody else. When we speak of way, when we think of a direction, a method, or a path that is worth treading in order to reach our goal, which is something that the Buddha had done and also achieved. And therefore he turns around and goes, okay, I'm going to point out a way for you to also follow and try. But I feel that at this moment, when we look at this global crisis, way also means an order which needs to be followed by the collective global community in order for us to sustain our lifestyle in a very different light. And so not only do we hope to find our way out of the crisis, I feel that in this moment, the Dharma also paves a path for us to think about how we lead ourselves to a normal, quote unquote. Normal can be regarded by people in very different lights. For some, they feel that normal is life as it is, just how life goes on. But when we put ourselves under the lens of the Dharma or reality, we also realize that the whole idea of normal is more than just life as it is, but with an ideal or a vision. We see life as it should be. Okay? And so life as it should be, light under the guidance of the Buddha, allows us to think about how we should think, how we should reflect, and how we should act. So in other words, when we come back to this path pointed out by the Buddha in a way, in order for us to find our way to ending all of this suffering, quote unquote, we now look at this as a method of recovery from the impact of COVID-19, okay? Recovery from job loss, recover from isolation, and recovery from uncertainty, and also recovery from life that has been put on hold. I feel that we are all experiencing these, yet the level of impact differs from individual to individual. So for example, last week we had an online session with the young adults from North America because of the shelter-in-place order. Everybody has to stay home. And this lack of connection with other human beings seems to have an immense impact on them. So just an opening of how is everybody, we felt that the 50 or 60 youths online started to well up. And that's when I felt this huge importance to find a way to make sure everybody is actually connected and everybody can stay hopeful in spite of all of this. And so to put in simple words, to me, when we talk about the Buddhist way out of this crisis, the crisis of COVID-19, the crisis of life that has been put on hold, the crisis of our normal that has been taken away from us when we are being asked to readjust. I see the Eightfold Noble Path not only as a teaching, but as a gateway of transformation. So how do we actually ensure that this transformation happens smoothly and in a positive way that helps us get through all of this, either as a way, a path, or a method? It's really up to every individual. But the Eightfold Noble Path, put in simple words as a way, is first of all, when we look at this, it allows us to think wisely. Okay, how do we think wisely in the face of COVID-19? It begins with right view. So in simple definition, right view means a clear and objective assessment, not of what's happening, but of what has caused COVID-19 to happen. Okay. And thinking about this, instead of blaming one another or finding a quick solution, first of all, right view allows us to realize that we are all in this together. And remember, no one is exempt. We are experiencing this in different levels. And maybe in one way or the other, we have all been a part of the cause of this outbreak, either as a result of a lack of respect for the ecological system, a lack of respect for all forms of life on Earth that carries this virus. And somehow it was supposed to be isolated from human-to-human transmission. But the way we consume animal products may have been a cause or a result of this global connection, which we take convenience for granted. And so this quick connection not only enables us to find a quick solution to our goals, but also at the same time, it it has created a quick path of transmission for all the problems as well. And so right view allows us to really think about, okay, if we have been a part of this cause, this means we can also be a part of the cause that brings everybody out of this. So we are all in this together. Anything we do can have an effect on this. And so there's never an act too small. There's never a person who does not make a difference. So this is right view. And right thought, coming in second, based on right view, asks us to process all of this information without being led by the nose by emotions or personal benefit only, because the solution is a chain. So no link should be missing. So in a quick conclusion to how we should think wisely is, first of all, to start from the perspective of that we are all connected. We are all in this together. Therefore, we can all create a cause to the solution together. And after thinking wisely, what follows is number 2, to take disciplined actions that start from the self. So going from right view and right thought, that allows us to think about the changes that are happening. How do we make the meaningful changes? As well as how we regard all of this with humility. Right? This is really a wake-up call for humanity. How do we respond in a respectful and considerate way for the dignity of all lives on earth? That's something we really need to think about wisely. And having thought about this wisely, now taking actions that are disciplined and that starts from the self involves right action. We feel that this world already has too many blames, too many lies, right? Too many words of discouragement, too many words of division. So right speech guides us in a direction of allowing us to speak words of gratitude, right? To thank everybody who's making an effort, thank everybody who's trying to inspire better change, and to thank everybody for being a part of this. And at the same time, speak words of encouragement so that we don't lose hope. So at this point, having gone through the pandemic for 3 months, what we need now are words of hope, words of encouragement. So maybe later we can ask everybody to share your comments on how we speak words of encouragement for everybody. And followed by, following right speech, we have right action, which is similar to right speech. So how do we act in a way that speaks our true character of kindness and compassion? And then, of course, most importantly, right livelihood, as we have to rethink the way we sustain our economic life. Money doesn't come first anymore. Profit, convenience doesn't come first anymore. So how do we reshape our career in a way that we are helping each other maintain that structure of resilience and togetherness? That's something which right livelihood asks us to think about. Now, the third part of the Noble Eightfold Path is asking us to stay focused on the new traits of change in our lives. So following right view, right thought, establishing a new attitude, right? And then disciplining our actions so that we maintain a sense of respect for all lives. Now, how do we stay locked in onto that mindset? Because it's quite easy for us to lose our focus. After 1 day or 2, right, we tend to fall back into that lethargic pattern, right? It's very hard to work from home. It's very hard to make sure that you're diligent. And so right mindfulness asks us to always stay in the here and now, focus with a clear and undistracted mind, so that as you come across all incidents and information about the coronavirus, right, you need to think about, okay, what is the goal of your action? What is the means that you're adopting to really achieve that goal? And are you mindful at each moment as you adopt the method? And finally, always think about whether your actions are in accord with the Buddha's teachings. And right mindfulness following that way allows you to really stay in that momentum, which is right concentration, so that in every moment of life, whether in fear or joy or uncertainty, check if you are aware and clear of what you're focusing on. And so this is all theoretical, but I think just paving the basic structure for our discussion today will allow us to think about where the Dharma is guiding us. And now the fourth part of the Noble Eightfold Path is to stay alert, stay resilient, okay, which comes through the teaching of right effort, which means to protect all good causes and inspire and transform unwholesome ones whenever we detect and become aware of these negative emotions or actions that are creating more fear. So remember, we are all trying to find a way out of this. So what happens when we find ourselves lost? What happens when we can't find a way out of this? We're stuck at home, right? We're not sure about whether we will still have a job tomorrow. In times when this happens, one thing we can remember is that even if we are not able to find a way now, we can always trust in our compassion and kindness that lies at the bottom of your heart. Just as Venerable Master Xing Yun once said, we can be without anything, but we can never be without compassion. And where there's compassion, there is a way. And so a quick recap: thinking wisely through right thought, right view; acting disciplinedly through right speech, right action, right livelihood. And then to really remain, the third part is to remain focused on the new traits developing from right speech, right action, right livelihood. Finally, right diligence allows us to stay alert and to stay resilient. Hopefully, in a nutshell, the Noble Eightfold Path can point us in some kind of direction to find our way out of the crisis and into a new order. So that's all I have to share.
Thank you, Venerable Miao Guang, for that wonderful outline of the Eightfold Path. So we can see that the Eightfold Path can be roughly divided into three parts. First, right view and right thought talks about the new attitudes that we should have facing any crisis. And then the actions that we should teach come in through right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And then, of course, what you said very perfectly was the third part, where right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration teaches us to stay focused and alert on the changes that we can make. So as Buddhist practitioners, we know that this focus and this alertness is not achieved in a day, but something that requires constant practice and perseverance. So I would like to direct this question to Venerable Juewei, who is the Abbess of Guang Shan, Toronto. So I would imagine that as someone who's very, very busy, you can serve in this example for the rest of us in our hectic lives. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do, and then how do you always make sure that you're staying focused and alert on applying the Eightfold Path to your life?
Well, thank you very much, Venerable Juewei, for the questions, and definitely thank you to Venerable Miao Guang for explaining the Eightfold Path to every one of us. And I refer back to the questions. What do I do? Well, as a monastic, I think our own cultivations and practice definitely a must. And however, cultivations is everywhere and in every second. So not only sitting there reading the sutra, chanting meditations. So, well, I do everything I have to do and have to face in my monastic life. So as a Sangha, I live in a Sangha community. So we have our group practices and individual practices that we have to follow, just like the morning and evening chanting and all other things deal with study, the sutras and meditations as well. But other than that, let's see what I do. As a guardian of a temple, I'll say that, a place that cultivates my mind and soul. So I learned how to take care of this important environment, important place. Definitely, it needs maintaining and repairing things that has been broken, everywhere in the temple. So like re-roofing, the roof is leaking, then you have to deal with. The air condition, just like today, what had happened in our main shrine, that it just broken up, and tomorrow is the service. So we have to find someone to come. All these things, the regular things that, just like you all, you have how you have to maintain your home. So sometimes even a septic tank, when I was in my previous temple, where was that was in Orlando. Obviously, I came from a country from Malaysia that I never saw. Because I live in a city that I never saw a septic tank. So when I first went to Orlando, wow, septic tank, what is that? So I have to deal with that. And then, eventually after 13 years, I have to repair the whole system for 3 to 4 times. So I think I'm now really, professionals on that things to deal with people, the vendors. So this is what I have learned from my, like maintaining a temple. But I think as a monastic, we also act as a community server. So I serve whoever comes to the temple, observing their needs, provide comfort, and try to calm them down. So whenever I see someone, especially a young man or even a senior, whoever come into the temple, you can feel the pain in their life, and then you need to talk to them. You need to calm them down, lead their thoughts as how the Buddha taught us. Definitely, with what we have just learned from Venerable Miao Guang, the Noble Eightfold Path is definitely put in front of me. And I always have them to have the right mindfulness is my major thing that I normally tell them. Also, as a lecturer, I share my experience with whoever joins my class, sharing experiences on my learning journey and how it affects my life. And lastly, as a leader at the temple, and I have to deal with lots of temple administrations, lots of paperwork, communications between temples and community agencies, governments. Sometimes I still have to deal with the accounting, all the monies. Don't think that a monastic, I don't have to deal with this, but we are in a temple that in a humanistic Buddhism temple. I can't leave everything behind, but we just have to see the realistic that we have to deal with this all the money stuff. And then definitely I have to think ahead on the future of development of the temple, and have to pay attention to the society movement and how we can cope with that and bring out what we have learned from the Dharma and bring it to the members and devotees. And through these different roles and positions, I learned to manage my thoughts at any time. And I learned to focus on the causes and conditions and have to think deeper in order to respond with my actions through bodily, orally, and mindful. Because, everyone walks into your temple. You need to be care for them. You need to know what they need. I came into Buddhism because of humanistic Buddhism. And what actually caught my attentions back in probably around 30 years ago, it was the humanistic Buddhism. That actually made me think that when I first know this humanistic Buddhism, wow, I think this is something that I can apply to my life from what I have learned. So that was the first year when I first went to United States to proceed for my undergrad. But when I first thought of my childhood, so even from primary school, high school, until college, Almost all I learned from the books, from the college, from the schools. Maybe we study a lot, but a lot of times I feel like what I learned is to prepare for the examinations. So after the examinations, probably I won't say I forgot all, but most of it I forgot what I have learned. So when I first found Sea Light Temple in Los Angeles, and I met Venerable Master Xing Yun, and I went to a lot of lectures, listened to the teaching from Humanistic Buddhism. It was the right word that come to my mind. It's just like a light blinking in my mind. Wow, I finally found something that I can use in my mind, in my life. However, almost 30 years later, about until today, that caught my attention on the same Humanistic Buddhism is the sentence saying how the masters described the Humanistic Buddhism. He talks about Humanistic Buddhism is about what the Buddha taught, what is needed by the human beings, and what purifies and what is virtuous and beautiful. But the word what is needed by Humanistic Buddhism actually put into my attentions. How can I give the needs to everyone? So especially when someone comes into the temple, do I actually recognize the needs? So if I can recognize the sufferings, and how can I give the comfort to them? And how can they receive the Dharma in order to meet their needs? So these are some of the questions when I meet people who walk into the temple. I would like to know what is actually needed by them, not what I want to give it to them. So this is my practice when especially during this pandemic, that I think we really need to know what is their fear, what is their worries. And also I will remind myself that what I'm doing is to cultivate myself through helping others to learn the Buddhism. So in whatever positions or role that I am dealing with, the purpose, I think the main purpose is to help people recognize the Dharma in their lives and help them to go through the difficulties. And more importantly, to have the right way, the correct path in their lives in order to attain the happiness and joyful stage. And I believe that the masters also talk about to aim for a world peace actually comes from nations, communities, families, and individuals. So I hope that we all can practice and begins from an individuals to throughout back to families, communities, nations, and world. Thank you. That's all I'm doing now. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Juewei, for showing us that Buddhist practice doesn't always come in the form of sitting meditation, but sometimes it can be dealing with the daily things such as fixing the septic tank, the roof, or paperwork. But throughout all of your examples, you showed us that your practice comes from the self and towards benefiting others. So the Eightfold Path is not just about liberation for oneself, but how do we put it into practice to help others. And you mentioned that in the temple, you often hear lots of young people coming in with their anxieties or suffering. And I would imagine that it would be very difficult to stay positive after you hear all of these stories. Sometimes it might make you feel pessimistic about life. But for this question, I guess I would like to direct it to Venerable Juewei, the third of our panelists. With everything that's happening around the world, it can be very difficult to stay positive and joyous. But Venerable Juewei, you're always known to be that Buddhist monastic with this amazing energy of joy. So how do you do it? People even describe you as having this infectious smile that spreads light and wisdom. And so how do you maintain this joy in spite of everything that's happening?
Thank you, Venerable Juewei, for the introduction. And thank you, Venerable Miao Guang, for the invitation, to all my Dharma brothers and sisters, to all Bodhisattvas and everybody in front of the YouTube channel. It's a pleasure to be here. Following from Venerable Miao Guang and Venerable Chueh is really difficult. We've got two really good practitioners who have got heartfelt wisdom to share with everyone. I live in an ivory tower. I'm here in the Nantian Institute. Not very much to share, but let me just say a little bit about how I maintain a little bit of positiveness amidst everything around me. I think in terms of the metaphor of a rainbow. When you think of a rainbow, what do you think of? Doesn't joy come to you? I'm sure that many of you will have an album of photos, and among them may be some rainbows. And when you look at rainbows, naturally, most of us would think of the joy that comes with seeing the rainbow and the surprise. We have to capture that rainbow. That's why we have all these photographs of rainbows. But if we think about rainbows, when do they appear? They very often appear after rain. They come after maybe thunderstorm. And rainbows are impermanent, isn't it? Rainbows don't last forever. And that's the Dharma. It teaches us about impermanence. And rainbows is made up of many elements, different colors, non-self. There's no one thing. Any one color would not make it a rainbow. It has to be a collection of colors. So from the rainbow comes this Dharma that the Buddha has been teaching us, to accept impermanence, to accept non-self. That's what the world really is. And that's why we practice, to learn how to conduct ourselves with the world as it really is. Today we've heard from Venerable Miao Guang and Venerable Juewei about how the Dharma can be used in our daily life. That's humanistic Buddhism. Many people have asked me, what is humanistic Buddhism? After all, here in Nantian Institute, we have the privilege of running the world's first graduate certificate in humanistic Buddhism. So when asked what is humanistic Buddhism, I recently coined this phrase. I call it everyday Dharma for everybody. And it is everyday Dharma, even amidst the pandemic. So this particular panel is about finding our way out of crisis. And I know that in this world today, we tend to measure ourselves in terms of IQ, EQ, SQ, where SQ is like spiritual quotient. I now have 3 CQs, okay? So they are creativity, compassion, and capacity. I think that these 3 are necessary for us in this world and for us out of the pandemic. And they match very nicely with the Noble Eightfold Path. For creativity, I would like to include right view and right thought, because that's what we need to have. We have to have the right view that although we are locked down for some of us, or that we have to work from home, or that we may be suffering from some job redundancies that's taking place, that's not going to be forever. There will be a rainbow ahead of us, right view. And with that right view will give us the right volition to act. So that's the creativity. See, As a result, we can have an opportunity for Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, and the equator to meet across all time zones. That's creativity. We can create opportunities ahead of us. So creativity is important for us to overcome whatever obstacles may be ahead of us and recognize impermanence. Then compassion. What is right speech, right action, right livelihood, and right effort, if not motivated by compassion? All practice has to be motivated by compassion and lead us down the compassionate path. And like what Venerable Miao said earlier, is this recognition of interdependence. I am in you and you are in me. We are in it together. And it's this sense of compassion. So if I have a job today and someone else does not, can we send a care package to the person? Can we at least say hello to the person? Like Venerable Chueh, who has to meet many suffering souls in her temple. She brings them, through her compassion, the light of the Dharma. So the rainbow tells us that the different colors have to come together in this perfect fusion. And this is what we are in this interdependent world, that we can come together if we think good thoughts and if we speak good words and we do good deeds. Then finally, we are creating capacity for ourselves with right mindfulness and right concentration. This capacity is necessary for us to move ahead. Earlier, just now, when we started, actually, during the ritual part, when we're supposed to have the chanting, on my end, it was silence. It was at the time that I go, wow, this is great, because the best music is silence. And it was at that moment that I decided that I'll not worry, I'll just nicely join palms and create my right mindfulness. And it was at that particular time that I realized I could really relax. It was through that silence, I created capacity within my mind. I don't have to have negative thoughts. Oh, what's happening? Oh, I told you to rehearse. Oh, this, oh, that. No, it's just that moment and living in that moment. So the Noble Eightfold Path is everyday Dharma for everybody and for any time. So with this, I hope that the metaphor of the rainbow, the 3CQ, will be able to help us all out of the crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Juewei, for sharing your 3 C's with us. I always thought of the 3 C's as cell phones, computers, and cameras, but now I know that the 3 C's actually mean creativity, compassion, and capacity. So I feel that this is something that we can keep in mind for our Buddhist practice. So for this next part of the panel, now that we've gotten a chance for all 3 of the panelists to talk about, I'd just like to raise a question that, in the series for our Guang Shan English Dharma services, we often talked about how to develop our strength, our inner power. For example, Venerable Juewei talked about how to transform the uncertainty of life during shelter in place. So it seems like most of the crises that we talk about tend to center on this pandemic that we're facing right now. But crisis can come in all different forms. Obviously, major crises would be like the Australia bushfire, the pandemic, or the current racism situation in the United States. But crisis can also appear not on a global level, but maybe more on a personal level. So I would like to just open this question to everyone. Could you share a little bit about how you think the Eightfold Path can help develop our inner power and how we should view crisis in general on a macro level? With this question, I would like Fan, if you could share a few words first, because you mentioned about developing this inner power in one of your talks on this series.
All right, thank you again. Well, this year is definitely a special year for all of us, facing such a different experience in our lifetime. And however, I have told myself too, at the same time, this is also once in a lifetime matter that we are going to face. And I'm having an additional experience add into my life. And this is actually also a time that actually testing my own cultivations. And how am I going to face or handle these situations? And first in my mindset or reactions. Well, again, a word of acceptance is the first thing in my mind. Acknowledge it, acknowledge the problem, and accept what had happened. As a Dharma practitioners, the first task is to make my mind a zone of peace. So instead of becoming entangled in the pain or fluster that exists externally, I need to face the fear, the sufferings, and transform them into compassions. So I have to think of the safeness of all the members or the visitors, and definitely my brothers and sisters that live together in the monastery. Then we then have to come up with a set of policies in order to safeguard everyone's mind. Listen to the advice from the government, wash our hands, keep social distancing, work from home, etc. But just like the Four Noble Truths, we have to acknowledge the problem. Like acknowledge there is suffering in the world. Just like if we are doing a case study, we have to identify the issue before we can make it into a case. We acknowledge the problem, then analyze it and keep studying the case. Then collecting the reasons, the causes and conditions. Then find a few possible solutions and finalize it with a confirmed way to solve that problem. And Buddha has found the ways for us to lead us to solve the issues in our life. Of course, you can still keep analyzing and find your own way. However, as a Buddhist practitioner, I found that Noble Eightfold Path actually kept me to move forward and changing my mind, calming myself so that I may see clear the path in front of me and clearly show me the way that I should go. And you can get swept up in a frightened, barricaded society, or you can respond calmly with both prudent actions and fearless steady heart. And the right view is the most important part of the whole Noble Eightfold Path, as Venerable Miao said. So if we can understand well enough on the causes and conditions of each incident, think deeper on the reasons, having a right thoughts of the whole process, I believe we can find a calmness somewhere inside ourselves and bring that peace and calmness from that insight and share with others. Because madness, nervous, anger will never resolve the problem. In a country, recently what had happened in the United States and all other worlds, we know that, right? A country will not become strong or wealthy or advance from the initiates of war or riots. And a country can only become stronger when all nations work together towards a mission, sharing experiences, learning from past mistakes and correcting them. And also from the sutra, we realize that the Buddha counseled that when a society comes together to make decisions in harmony, when it honors its elder and the wise ways they have established, when it cares for its most vulnerable members, and when it respect the environment and listen to its citizens, it can be expected to prosper and not decline. We are all together. We know that. And we are not alone. And this is actually reflected in the Buddhist teaching of interdependence. And your relationships with others, right view, right thoughts, right speech, right actions, and right livelihood are all part of the path of enlightenment and expressions of the enlightened heart. So from a quiet heart, you can look and see how society treats its most vulnerable members and whether it is acting in ways that foster greed, hate, fear, and ignorance. You can begin to identify what you can do nationally and internationally to support generosity and respect, to minimize violence, and to end racism and the exploitations. So when you have looked clearly, you can dedicate it yourself to helping to bring about a wise and compassionate society. Definitely, this is a bodhisattva act, like setting the compass of the heart. This dedication expresses your deepest value. So as you sit quietly, you will see what is needed to bring benefit to the world. And the Buddha taught that inner peace grows from mindfulness, compassion, and respect. That's how I feel towards the incidents. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Juewei, for reminding us that no matter what kind of crisis we are facing, whether it be a global crisis or personal crisis, we should always treat it as a once in a lifetime experience and an opportunity for us to grow, that we should face the problem, acknowledge it, accept it, but look at it clearly with a mind of peace. And in that way, we can transform suffering into compassion. And so as we begin to discuss about the ways in which we can transform suffering into compassion, I would like to just invite our Zoom guest audience. If you do have any questions or comments at any time, you can raise your hand and then I'll be able to call on you. So Aina, would you like to say a few words?
I had to find my unmute button here. I was really touched, Venerable Chueh, by what you said, because there are times when, in fact, the question that I was going to ask was, when is right speech and right action not being done in our silence, by not addressing the issues that are in our society? And I think that it's important as Buddhist practitioners to know that we have to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, to stand up for what we understand is right for people. And that, in my view, a wrong speech is silence, because sometimes that is dishonest. I see what's happening now in this country, this country of my birth, and think that there are people who were born here who have suffered so. And we have a role to play in talking about acceptance and compassion and the equality of everyone. And it's important that we raise our voice for that. And having been in a temple with Venerable Chueh over the years, I know what it looks like to reach out to people that many times are spurned by society because they might not look the way we look, or they might not smell that well, or they might have behaviors that we find as objectionable instead of being there for them. And I think that this is a time for all faith communities, including Buddhism, to really put in practice what we're talking about, put in practice and reaching out and having a strong voice, not just a soft voice, but sometimes we have to research, acknowledge that there is a problem and find a solution, and then fight for that solution for especially people who are in pain.
Thank you, Aina, for your question. So this goes out to all the panelists. What are your views on right speech? So what's a Buddhist perspective on what we should say and keeping silent? How does that come into play with compassion? I know that sometimes people have this misinterpretation of treating compassion as like leniency, or you just turn the other cheek. But Aina seems to raise that sometimes in times of crisis that maybe compassion can come in a different form. So to all our panelists, what are your perspectives on this? First, we'll go to Venerable Miao.
Okay, I can see the thinking bubble popping up above Venerable Juewei and Venerable Juefan. So let me be the buffer zone by offering my first response. I think this is a very important question and a difficult one to answer, especially from a Buddhist perspective, because we have all learned that the Buddha always took that silent revolution, right? He always brought about this huge change by remaining silent. Even through the crisis of his own clan being wiped out, his choice was to sit in the middle of the road, right? Out of the belief that this army, with giant elephants, and horses will stop charging over him. And so, is it okay to remain silent? To me, I feel that this is a question of when karma takes shape. By karma, it means deed. And when we think about something, right, it doesn't immediately become a deed or a karma. To me, I feel that it needs to be expressed through your speech and action in order for it to make a change or an impact. Because karma, in the meaning of deed, will be connected to an impact or influence or a change that is brought about by a visible expression of your thought. But at the same time, we realize that when the Buddha spoke one word, it was understood in 1,000 ways by different sentient beings. So there's no way of ensuring that what we say is always delivered properly or desirably. So what do we do in the face of crisis? Can we remain silent or without action? Right? I refer to Barack Obama's response to the Black Lives Matter incidents. First of all, he says, of course, we need to mobilize to make sure that everybody's voice is heard, but in a peaceful way. So action is necessary, but under the responsibility that we are not taking this action to create harm. And secondly, this voice needs to be heard by an influential group of leaders who can make changes in the directions of collective life in order for actual change to happen. And so I feel that he spoke in a very responsible and courageous way because, first of all, it takes wisdom for us to decide what we need to do in the face of crisis. And secondly, it takes courage for us to speak up and to make sure that our thoughts and our ideas are being heard and received. And in cases when this is not received well, right, it takes compassion for us to accept the outcome of our wise and courageous decision. So we feel that it matters for us to take action. But we're also very fortunate to be under the guidance of the Buddha, so that we're always acting out of empathy and kindness towards the self and other. After all, what Buddhism has taught to us in the most important way is to always to make sure that anything is done, we always have to take into consideration the benefit of the self and other. So be it Black Lives Matter or this COVID-19 outbreak, or as I think about the heartbreaking bushfires in January, right? I again want to say this is the moment for us to learn to voice our opinions, right, under the guidance of the Dharma. And then think about how these voices can be connected into a louder sound that will echo with the world for a better change. So this is my 2 cents.
Thank you, Venerable Miao Guang. Chris, you raised your hand earlier. Do you have something to share with us?
Just unmuting there. I guess in response to silence and speech, it's important to bring back the first principle, and that is cause no harm. So be careful what you say and think it out, because what you want to say, you want to be of benefit and not to be harmful or damaging. So that's the thought that came to my mind when that was being raised there. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Chris. Yeah, talking about right speech. Okay, Venerable Juewei. Could you also reflect upon about not just speech, but how do we reset our actions sometimes by not acting or not speaking? So when do we speak and when do we act? I think that's a very good question. Venerable Juewei, would you like to answer that?
Well, I was actually planning to go back to Ina's initial question, because when she started asking the question, it brought to mind what I've been doing this few weeks. I'm preparing for teaching the Buddhist ethics subjects in Nantian Institute in August. So as a result, Buddhist ethics, right? So it's about what's right, what's wrong, what would lead to a good outcome, what would lead to an unwholesome outcome. And I constantly remind myself that actually in our mind, we have a Buddha and a Mara, and that's constantly fighting. So the world out there is actually an image of the world in us. So it's that Buddha and Mara contentious dispute that is leading that karma that Venerable Miao Guang has been talking about. That's what's playing out. Very often when I'm placed in a situation of dilemma, I often ask myself, what would Venerable Master Xing Yun do? Or what did he do in the past? He's such a role model for us. And I noticed that Venerable Master Xing Yun has always had in his mind a vision of a pure land on earth. And we all know in our lives, how can he have that faith of a pure land on earth? We are all in that mud at the moment. So how did he do it? He had that vision first. And with that vision, he puts in place all the conditions against all odds. He is such a wise monk and very compassionate. He can see how and where he can just poke us so that we can move beyond our comfort zone. I think people who are protesting are probably anger. There's so much anger, but I don't want to act in a position of anger. I don't want to speak from a position of anger or even worse, of hatred. I want to make sure that in my mind, the Buddha has one Mara first. And then from that position of compassion, I create. This is Master Xing Yun. He creates everything from nothing. So he's so creative. And I think it's only then. And how do we create capacity? This whole thing about creativity, compassion, and capacity really comes from my study and my understanding of Venerable Master Xing Yun. And it comes from my recent crisis, day after day, that I have to deal with. I think of myself as a little cogwheel. And as a little cogwheel, I can't turn that big Mara out there. I cannot. But if I can get a few cogwheels around me and we all turn in that same direction, then we can turn a medium cogwheel. And from that medium cogwheel, I can turn that big cogwheel and make Mara lose power on me. So I think I have to start small, but I have to first fill my mind with Buddha. So it's not that I'm silent for an action. No, I think we are paving the way. We are influencing people around us, and we can then slowly turn the wheel. This is how Guang Shan comes about. Who would think that 50 years ago that we could have a transnational enterprise like Guang Shan today? With millions of people with this positive drive. Now it's how do we use it? So can we come together through dialogues like this? How do we build that pure land and make it stay? I think Venerable Master Xing Yun has given us that platform to do so. Now it's up to us. And with every interaction we are building that solid base. And then let's build projects together, real life projects. Of course, and I'm academic, let's write journals, books. Let's put our voice out there into the media. Let's run communities of practice, build communities, positive, wholesome communities together. I think that would be our small to our medium wheel to turn that big wheel. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Juewei. Ina, before we get to you, we actually have a question submitted by one of our YouTube viewers who are viewing live. So this question is from Raymond Chow, and he asks that knowledge and skillful means is wisdom, so when to act and when to not act. But the world is full of unwholesome news, so how do we know how to differentiate what is wholesome and unwholesome? How do we know that we have right view? So this goes out to all the panelists. And then also a second question from Joanna Chu, who asks about her friend in the US. She has been battling with anxiety and insomnia. Her condition has worsened with the pandemic outbreak. Do the Venerables have any advice for her? Venerable Juewei.
I'll do the insomnia one first because Priscilla has just dropped out, but Priscilla is a medical doctor and she has recommended Nantian Institute's Mindful Check-in app to her patients who have suffered from insomnia and has proven to be helpful. So there's evidence-based recommendation here. So give that a try. Then I know anxiety happens in all of us, even in us. When before coming on this program, I was very anxious too. But I keep telling myself that we are, as what Venerable Miao Guang says, I'm not alone. I'm not alone in this. I know it's very difficult ahead of me. I can call on help. It's for us to open our hands out and reach out and ask for help. We are in this interconnected community, and some bodhisattva, some invisible hand will pull us out of the mud, and we can become that lotus growing towards sunshine. Good luck.
Okay, would anyone also like to add to the response to these two questions? Venerable Miao Guang.
Okay, allow me to address Raymond's question about the world full of unwholesome news. I would just like to address the definition of wholesome and unwholesome. So basically, when you come across something that is wholesome, you will feel physically and mentally healthy. Okay, I just came across some wholesome experiences when I listened to Venerable Juewei speaking in such calm and such connected and personal way. That was a wholesome teaching to me because I think personally my shoulders felt lighter. It brought a smile to my face. And it made me feel like when I put her words into action, I actually will be assured that I can bring about better change or more positive energy to the people around me. And in terms of unwholesome news, you will see, you can probably gauge the word unwholesome based on the energy that it actually spreads out, usually under the names of anger, fear, selfishness, and arrogance. Okay, your words and your actions speak your character louder than anything else. Doesn't matter how hard you try it. The way you express yourself, express your heart. So when we are confronted by people who are angry, who are violent, I think what we need to address is the fear that lies behind the way they express themselves. And like what Venerable Master Xing Yun says, okay, every person is like a door. You must find the right key in order to open that door to kindness. And so addressing their fear somehow gives us, first of all, the calm in confronting that violent reaction. And secondly, it sparks up our sense of kindness towards that person. You might discover that whenever you address their fear and you give rise to that kindness, the fear of within yourself somehow starts to go away. So I would say reaching into that deeper power by, first of all, addressing the deeper part of kindness or unkindness, or either wholesomeness or unwholesomeness, is something that can help us navigate our way through the actions of other people. And so, of course, again, don't trust anything that is posted on Facebook. Refer to the official websites to check again what you're reading. Just the other day, we saw this picture of the Queen, okay, wearing purple masks, green masks, and yellow masks that matches her fitting. So everybody just sent this photo. The photo went viral. And when I forwarded to my sister in UK, she goes, oh, she said in a very British accent, she goes, oh, funny, I don't see anything on the news over here, right? And so that kind of reminded me to check on the official news or websites for us to see, okay, what kind of news or information is coming through us. And so don't be shaken by unwholesome news. I think look deeper into the message behind. That can inspire us. Secondly, if we don't see anything inspirational, at least we can learn to address the fact that people who are sending out unwholesome news are also experiencing unsettling moments. That's all I have to share for now.
Thank you, Venerable Miao Guang. Actually, our Dharma panel, the time is nearly up, so I would like to now pass the quote-unquote mic to each of our panelists to share a few words of wisdom in a sentence or two to sum up today's discussion. I really wish that we had more time, but maybe you can do this next time. So first of all, I would like to invite Venerable Juewei from Toronto to share a few words about today's discussion. Venerable Juewei, you need to unmute your microphone.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, and really an honor to join everyone here. Well, from actually the whole sessions, that I would like to remind myself again that, if we are actually facing any fear, we actually have to acknowledge it, accept it, and then practice in actions. Bring out your inner peace to help not only yourself, but your family, the communities, and the nations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Venerable Juewei. And then Venerable Juewei, I see a rainbow appearing behind you. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So when I, during the pandemic lockdown, I did my paper card. Oh, see, I did a paper card, and this is a picture of it. The rainbow over Nantian Temple. I'm blocking it. I'm blocking it. Okay, Nantian Temple and Nantian Institute. So this is just a reminder to us all that there is a way out. There always will be, and it's the rainbow. We have to grasp the moment and remember our way out can be motivated by the 3 C's of compassion, of creativity, compassion, and capacity. Best wishes to everyone.
Thank you, Venerable Juewei, for sharing your rainbow with all of us and then reminding us once again what the 3 C's that we truly need in life are. They're definitely not cell phones, but compassion, creativity, and capacity. All right, last but not least, I would like to pass our virtual mic to Venerable Miao Guang to share some words of wisdom.
Okay. As you can see, the background, I don't have a rainbow, but I have something that looks like an aura shining out of my head, right? The 3 characters actually means I am a Buddha. And so I would like to share with everybody who have very kindly come to join the session today. In moments when we feel despair, in moments when we feel uncertainty, in moments when we feel helpless, what we need to do is to never stop believing in ourselves. Because what lies within that self, first of all, is a Buddha that would draw a rainbow over your sky. It will shine a ray of hope over you. And what also lies in ourselves is the whole world of sentient beings who are connected with us. And so with the Buddha and the whole world of sentient beings that lies within us, when we believe in this togetherness, remember, you will always have someone to reach out to. Worst comes to worst, I'll give you Venerable Juefan's email and Venerable Juewei's personal account. You can email them. The 2 will always be more than ready to reach out to you and offer a helping hand. Or in moments when you don't know what to do, think about other people around you. When you don't know what to do for yourself, why not try to think about what we can do for others? Since there's nothing we can do for ourselves, right? So find something else to do. And you might discover that in your effort to become creative and want to have the capacity to do something for others, right? Suddenly you find a way out again. Okay, so please never stop believing in yourself because there's so much more within that self.
Thank you, Venerable Miao Guang, and to all of our panelists and Zoom guests. Thank you so much for discussing the Eightfold Path and how this can help us find a way out of crisis, no matter whether it's a pandemic or is the bushfire, or, for example, the current protests in America. Or it could just be applied to a personal level, whether it's a personal crisis or not. So these are very important teachings for us to keep in mind, especially during these trying times. So before we conclude the session, it's also very important to dedicate the merits, remember to cultivate the compassion and kindness towards all sentient beings. So we would like to invite Venerable Juefan to lead us in a dedication of merits and a brief prayer before we end this session. So please let us join our palms together to send our good wishes. Venerable Juefan.
May kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity pervade all worlds. May we cherish and build affinities to benefit all beings. May chant, pure land, and precepts inspire equality and patience. May our humility and gratitude give rise to great vows. May this Dharma panel brings light and peace to all. May this world be free from turmoil of the outbreaks. May we respect and embrace all. May each and every one of us be saved and well. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Juefan, for that wonderful prayer. And last but not least, we have our group photo. So our tech team here will take a screen cap for us to commemorate this occasion. So we would like everyone to form the Lotus Mudra, which is to join your thumb and your middle finger together and to smile at the camera. All right, 1, 2, 3, Bodhi tree. All right. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope that this session has been helpful. And if you feel that this Dharma has brought light to you and your family, Please remember to subscribe to our channel and join us again next weekend for another one of our regular sessions of the Guang Shan English Dharma services. So a big thank you to all of our panelists and our Zoom guests meet online. We know that it's very difficult to meet with all of us throughout the different time zones. Thank you very much for sharing your time with us, and see you next weekend. Amitofo.